All right, everybody. Welcome to the Contextual Christian Church Bible Study, where today we're going to read Ezekiel chapter 16, verses 35 to 48. I'm going to pray it in. Everybody bow your heads. Father, thank you for getting us on this Bible study today. As it sounds like we're continuing into the emotions you're pouring out, talking about how far gone the children of Israel have went, and the point you're trying to get across. So let's go ahead and continue into that and get started. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. So, last time what we went through could honestly be summarized in one sentence. Continuing to go through God expressing how far gone the children of Israel have been. Now, as a little detail aside, a couple of things that he pointed out is how they've even taken his sons and daughters and sacrificed them to other gods by burning them alive. And also that they act like they forgot where they came from. Every single thing that when they came from, they had nothing. They were nobody before God had built them up. And then also how they had this beauty that was set up by them by God, but they use it to prostitute themselves into other gods, to give themselves over to other gods. And he took it as far in details to explain that not only have they played the whore, but they have even paid people to sleep with them, being a whore and a contradiction because you're supposed to pay the prostitute, not the other way around. And that's basically what it went into as some examples. But overall concept, God going further in about how they've just outright did wrong and left everything behind that God had given them, even using the stuff that He had given them for the works unto a false God or false gods. And so that's where we continue at the end of 34, going into 35 now, as I'll go ahead and switch it so that Charles can read. And go ahead when you're ready.
All right, I'll be reading Ezekiel chapter 30, chapter 16, verse 35 to 39.
Oh, we jumped ahead.
Yeah, we did. I'm going to give it a couple seconds. Verse 35. Wherefore, O harlot, hear the word of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord God, because thy filthiness was poured out, and thy nakedness discovered through thy whoredoms with thy lovers, and with all the idols of thy abominations, and by the blood of thy children, which thou didst give unto them. Behold, therefore, I will gather all thy lovers, with whom thou hast taken pleasure, and all them that thou hast loved, with all them that thou hast hated. I will even gather them round about against thee, and I and will discover thy nakedness unto them, that they may see all thy nakedness. And I will judge thee as women that break wedlock and shed blood are judged. And I will give thee blood and fury and jealousy. And I will also give thee into their hand, and they shall throw down thy eminent place, and shall break down thy places. They shall strip thee also of thy clothes, and shall take thy fair jewels, and leave thee naked and bare. So in my section, let me reread something. Wherefore, O harlot, hear the word of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord God, because of thy filthiness was poured out, and thy nakedness discovered through thy whoredoms with thy lovers, and with all the idols of thy abominations, and by the blood of thy children which thou didst give unto them. Oh, so we got into that already about them just being filthy, filthy people, whoring after other gods and images, whoring after other nations of the people, giving the children to the fire. Because of all of that, we've been discussing in the studies. God is going to give the children of Israel, or you're going to gather the lovers of the children of Israel, the ones that love them and the ones that hate them, and they're going to go against the children of Israel. So your haters and the ones you've been around loving on and all this other stuff are going to come against you.
Oh, hold on. One thing to take into account when saying that, it didn't say your haters.
Well, no, not your haters. I'll say this: with all them that thou hast hated. So those you hated, then
There you go.
those you hated. Sorry,
And
that was my
and one
fault.
other thing to point out in 36, through thy whoredoms with thy lovers and with all the idols of thy abominations and by the blood of thy children. Those three, are those metaphors or are those literal
No,
details?
literal.
Exactly. So what would this technically not condemn as in like put to hell, but condemn as to say wrong that people don't consider to be wrong today?
mm, that people don't consider wrong. I mean, because we're talking about
Hmm.
literal. Oh, you know what? You know what people don't consider wrong because they don't know they don't have the knowledge in all of this. Going after all the putting Jesus, the Jesus cross on the Jesus piece, having Jesus on the crown of thorns on gold on their neck,
Nope.
um, horoscopes
Nope.
and all of that stuff. Oh, okay.
I said, what does this condemn? This doesn't condemn that. That's not an idol. That's a graven image. You're creating an image, but that's not an idol. Idol is idolatry. You're worshiping something that's not God. That falls under something that making an image of God. We're not supposed to do that. That's a separate thing. One is worshiping a different God. The other is making an image of things of heaven and earth. It can be used in worship, but the very aspect of the imagery is not allowed regardless if it's in the midst of worship or not. You see what I'm saying? The difference?
I see the difference. So it'd have to go back to when I was going to bring up like the horoscopes or worshiping, because you don't have the knowledge of this to understand what right from wrong anyway.
I
So
can't say
the
that. A lot of Christians today understand that that's wrong. There are a lot that
just
understand
Christians
that's wrong.
or everybody else with the Christians.
Well, remember the context. We're talking about God's people going into these things. Would everybody else be considered God's people today? Or just the
To
people who are supposedly Christians?
I was about to say you wouldn't be today. People wouldn't be God's people unless they follow the necessary steps,
No, that's the point. The people who are supposedly God's people are the ones that are Christians.
right?
So that would actually put them in the same line here. But those people do condemn the horoscopes, a lot of them. There's a mass majority. It's not something that's not condemned or not looked at wrong. But you get individuals, you get certain sects of Christianity that don't say it's wrong, but as a majority, most say that it's wrong.
Okay, okay.
Everybody who doesn't actually like believe in God or claim to be Christian at all, they wouldn't be part of that connection because what we're talking about here is the people who are supposedly following God doing these things. So in today's standard, the people who are supposedly following God doing those things would be called Christians or Christianity as an umbrella term, even though they're not real Christianity. But that would make them exactly the same. So everybody outside of Christianity would not be included It would just be the fake Christians.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah, because
even the
now
fake
because
Christians still condemn those things.
I didn't know they condemned them because we actually had somebody leave ours and make a post about like different like horoscopes and stuff. I've heard
Well,
Christians actually.
individuals, yeah, but remember, what I'm saying is it's something that that nobody, like as a majority, nobody condemns. Nobody looks at as wrong today. All right. So Thomas, what in 36 is shown as being wrong that people do not call wrong today as a majority, mass majority?
Let me just read it one more time.
Not a
Just a
problem.
little bit, because thy filthiness was poured out. Our nakedness of every people with thy lovers. Um, uh, sinning as long as you repent.
Thomas, are you giving an answer without actually thinking about how it connects to the context again?
Well, I'm seeing these constant things happening. Hold on one second.
Mm-hmm. You like how I corrected you like that? Like, are you giving it without thinking about how it connects?
Does that make you feel better about yourself?
Do you feel good about it? Yeah, yeah, you got it. Are you happy with yourself, Thomas? Are you satisfied? Do you want me to say the question one more time so you could focus while you're reading it to see if you can figure it out?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
All right. So the question again is, what is shown to be wrong in 36 that today, as a mass majority, nobody calls wrong? Nobody thinks of it as being wrong as a mass majority. And mind you, that would mean there are exceptions, just like in what Charles said, but it's the mass majority does not think it's wrong. Whereas with Charles's example, most of them think it's wrong. It's the exception that doesn't. So what in 36 is shown to be wrong that
Yeah.
in today mass majority nobody thinks is wrong?
I don't know.
All right. Charles, do you want to give it one more shot?
Oh, I don't have it.
All right. It's the first part. And thy nakedness discovered through thy whoredoms with thy lovers. The reason I asked if this seems like literal examples or metaphorical is because that matters. How many things do we have listed as specific things that are wrong to do or be in 36? The first thing we have is the whoredom with thy lovers. The second one is the idolatry of their abominations. The third is the blood of their children. Those are three different things that are pointed out as to how their filthiness is poured out. So the whoredom with thy lovers. Well, what did we already discuss yesterday? What is the whoredom? What is it actually talking about? Thomas? Don't forget to unmute.
Cheating on your man, not being loyal, not showing the love. You showing everybody else's love, but not him, and paying for it is that.
Nope. That was the metaphor, not what it actually was. What
Okay.
did it represent? I said. Charles?
Sleeping around.
I like how you didn't listen to the question. I said, what did it represent? Not what is it? A representation means what did the metaphor stand for? So the whoredom was the idolatry, the service of other gods. The children of Israel was described as being whores, as giving themselves over to other gods. But you guys both could have gotten that from 36 as well. Thus saith the Lord, because thy filthiness is poured out, and thy nakedness is discovered through thy whoredoms with thy lovers, and with all the idols of thy abominations, and by the blood of thy children, which thou didst give unto them. Who's the them, Thomas?
Their neighbors.
What? Are you joking?
Hold on.
No, come on, Thomas. We talked about this. You got to think, not just jump and give an answer. Charles,
Sorry, I was
who
yeah,
is
go ahead.
them?
Them in the end of 36, the other gods.
There you go. The other gods. You
That's
guys
what I was
got to
referring
think.
to.
Is that what he
They
said, Charles?
I heard
didn't they
Am I
neighbors.
not
wrong?
didn't they not refer to them as their neighbors?
No,
Assyrians and the no?
no. That is the lovers in this example.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Did they kill the children for the countries around them, or for the gods that those countries serve?
The gods.
So you didn't think about it before you jumped to an answer.
I see
Think
what you're
it
saying.
through. Got to work on that. So, the part that is wrong here, that is not shown as wrong today, keep in mind that this is saying that the filthiness is poured out and the nakedness is shown through these three things. So the filthiness is poured out and the nakedness is shown through the whoredom with thy lovers. As we just said, what does the whoredom represent, Charles?
After going after other gods.
Going after other gods. So in this context, you could just say that with the rest of it. The filthiness is poured out and the nakedness is discovered through worshiping other gods with thy lovers. And with the idolatry of your abominations, or the horrible things that you do for them. And by the blood, you killing your children for them, for these other gods. So when we look at that, it's literally saying that the filthiness, the nakedness, or in other words, the sinfulness, if we were to simplify it, is being poured out through these different ways. Now, in today's society, as a whole, as a majority, do people think it's wrong to date somebody who has a whole different belief system or is not willing to follow and do what God says? Thomas?
You said do people think it's wrong?
Yeah. Do people today think it's wrong to date somebody of a different belief as a mass majority, or to date somebody who don't
No,
follow God?
no.
Exactly. But that's exactly what God is showing here. Think about what led to them and their idolatry. The children of Israel, if we look at what led to their idolatry, yes, as we talked about, unsatisfied is where it stems from originally. But where does most of their idolatry come from? Mingling with people of a different faith, of a people that are not willing to follow or don't follow at all. And if we look at it today, wouldn't that also include fake Christians who are unwilling to learn and change, Charles?
Yes.
And have we not seen, even in this church, Thomas, where people choose their relationship over God?
Yep.
So, ironically, still to this day, don't we see people's sinful nature, their idolatry, shown through the whoring themselves off to these other gods through their relationships, Charles?
Yeah, to this day.
To this day.
Yeah.
So, yes, that hasn't changed at all. And then think about the blood of thy children. Okay, murder is a sin, right or wrong, Thomas?
Yes.
So, wouldn't abortion also be a sin, Thomas?
Yes.
But do people make excuses for people who have had abortions, Charles?
All the time.
And what kind of excuses do they make? Give me an example of one.
um, I don't want it to set my life back. I have things I want to accomplish. I want to finish college, get the upgrade in the CEO position. I don't want it holding me back in life. Uh,
Uh, Now, simplify that into the actual source of sin. What would that sinful source actually be instead of the word for word?
Sinful source.
Like the most basic level of what the sin actually is. What would that be?
Well, doesn't it stem back to what you brought up with murder? How I'd rather murder the and not have the child, not have the responsibility to live my
No?
life, do what I want.
Well, there. I want to live my life and do what I want.
Uh, YOLO, basically.
Not YOLO. That's a symptom. That's not the cause. The
Oh, okay,
cause
yeah, yeah.
is I am my own God. I want to do things my way. There's a whole song about it from Frank Sinatra. And I did it my way. It's about the love of self over the love of God. You are your own idol. Thomas, what's another example of abortion or excuse for abortion different than that? Different than life being
Yeah.
held back?
One word I wanted to give for Charles real quick was egotistic. But
Yep,
another example from for excuse wise.
yep,
Oh, she was raped.
yep.
Yeah.
She was raped. She was intimately attacked. She was attacked in intimacy. Now, if you break that down to the basic level, what's the actual sinfulness behind it?
Like that example you give of the Hitler. If Hitler was a baby, he never actually committed those things. Technically, he was an innocent child. So you murder an innocent child, you murderer.
Nope.
Oh man.
That's again the symptom. You did the same thing Charles did. That's funny as heck. But that's a symptom, not the cause. The symptom is you killed an innocent, but the cause is you're still thinking about yourself. I'm dealing with hard times. Something is I dealt something bad happened to me. Ergo, I don't want the child. I don't want this innocent child because I was attacked. So again, it boils down to the same thing. It's the love of self. It's you are your own God. So when you look at the actual origins of this, it's putting your desires and yourself as God rather than God being God. Same thing with relationships. Why would you be unwilling to give up a relationship with a person who doesn't want to put God first? Whether it's somebody who doesn't follow God at all, or whether it's somebody who they somewhat follow God, but the moment the Bible contradicts what they want to believe, they reject God and stick with what they want to believe. Why would you stay in that relationship? Because you're putting yourself first. It's no different than the cause for abortion. Now, the symptom, the end result is way worse with abortion because an innocent life is being taken. You're not innocent as an adult. You are a sinner. An innocent life is taken with abortion. But at the same time, you are giving up salvation. You are giving up eternity over somebody that rejects what you supposedly believe. So that same selfishness still boils it down to that. So if we really look at this as today, do we see anything in the Bible that says in the New Testament even that it is not only acceptable, but it's okay to date somebody who has a whole different belief system or date somebody who doesn't follow God? Have you guys seen that? Have we seen that as long as we've been reading the Bible, as far as we've gone? Have we seen that at all, Thomas, then Charles?
No.
No.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, what have we seen that's similar but different, Charles?
Come back to me. I need to remember this.
Okay. Thomas, what have we seen that's similar but it is different?
Um, what, them being like a babe in the faith and just lacking the knowledge, or
How is that similar to dating somebody of a whole different belief system?
what? Honestly, I don't know. I don't want to guess.
All right. Charles?
The closest thing I can remember is when the children of Israel, no, I don't think they were supposed to deal with the strangers. Even though the strangers gave up their old things to follow the children of Israel, I don't think they were supposed to deal with strangers. I was about to bring up the children of Israel and the strangers that followed with them, but I don't remember if they were
There
even
was
allowed to do
certain
that.
instance in there. You are right, Charles, that did exist. There are two examples that we've seen in the Bible so far, whether through worship service or through Bible study. One was when the children of Israel had taken over some group when they were getting in the promised land, and they had taken a woman who was one of the servants or one of the people as a servant, if they desired to be having her as his wife. But in that situation, there was a requirement to be done at first. Now, Charles, do you remember what the requirement was before they could marry him?
That person, the woman was supposed to be like a servant or something for a certain amount of time,
Yep. Not a servant. They had to be living together.
living together. That's what it was.
They were required to live together for a month before they could get married. Now, why would God require them to live together for a month straight before they could get married? Thomas? I almost said Thomas again.
Just like a chemistry test, yoke. See if y'all yoke together well or not, or is she willing to be receptive and learn and grow?
Good. You got both parts correct. That was a two-part answer. One, you need to make sure you're actually compatible. Because once you're married, it's marriage till death in the Jewish religion. Yeah, they gave a certificate of divorce, but it was never supposed to be like that. And who was it that said that they're never supposed to be like that? God, in form of Jesus as well. So you had to make sure you were actually compatible. And then the second part, you had to make sure they were actually willing to follow. Even if you felt compatible, if they're unwilling to follow, they can't stay there. The strangers were required to follow just as much as the children of Israel. If you're living under my roof, you have to live by God's rules. So if you were going to date somebody who is of a different faith, what is the first thing that you need to make sure of, Thomas?
Sorry, my son's being extra in the back. What'd you say? What was that question?
I'll give you the second question when we
All
get to
right,
the
thank
next
you.
example. Charles, if you're going to
Um,
date somebody who's of a different faith, what is the first thing you need to make sure of before anything else?
make sure you drop that faith, so I can teach you my faith. You're gonna drop that.
Exactly. Faithfulness has to come first, not compatibility on the sense of emotional, but true compatibility. Not that surface level, we get along, we have fun, I enjoy your. No, true compatibility is required. That's the first thing. Then, and with that, is she willing to learn and grow and follow God? If she ain't willing to do that, then everything else is pointless because she's not compatible or she'll lead you into falseness. This happened with Solomon. Solomon was warned not to take women of other faiths as wives. He was told not to. So again, we see the example. Told not to. And he was also told why. Charles, do you remember why he was told not to?
Man, it's kind of not. Yeah, no, but go ahead. I kind of do, but kind of don't.
All right, Thomas, do you remember why Solomon was told not to take wives of other peoples? Other faiths, more specifically?
Look at this.
Because they would pull him further away from what he had going on.
Only
Right.
problem with that is further. It was just pulling
Okay.
away, not further. He
Pull him
wasn't
away.
away yet.
Gotcha.
So yeah, they would pull him away from God. Has that changed at all? Even 4,000 years, 2,000 years, somewhere in between there from then to now? No, it hasn't. Then let's look at the example of what's in the New Testament. In the example in the New Testament, what does it show about any examples of being with somebody who is of a different faith? Do you remember, Thomas?
Yes, regarding to whether or not they bring you closer to or further away, push you closer to or further away.
What example is that? Because I said, what
Just in
example
regard,
in the New Testament?
uh, yoking, correct?
Nope.
Okay.
Remember, we're talking about relationships here. We're not talking about just dealing with people. Unequally
Okay.
yoked with unbelievers does not mean marriage. In that context, it doesn't even mean marriage. It's more generic than that. That's too specific. Charles, do you remember what the example in the New Testament is of being with somebody who is not a believer of God?
No, I don't.
All right. The example in the New Testament is if you're married and then you come to God. That's the example in the New Testament. You were already currently married and then you came to God and obeyed the gospel, obtained salvation. And in that example, it says not to leave them. And it says as the only time that you can actually get remarried, because it says you are not held accountable to it, you're not held in bondage to it. What is the only time there that you could get remarried in that specific example? Do you remember, Thomas?
She was the complete opposite, not wanting to.
Nope.
Co-
Charles?
Didn't we talk about this in an example of like when someone turns away from the faith completely in that marriage?
Nope. That's what Thomas was about to say.
Oh, okay.
So it's if she decides not to stay with you, if she decides to leave you because of you following God. Now, if you're not doing right by God, if you're not obeying the laws of God and keeping your house as God's house, is she going to have a problem staying with you while she's living in sin? Thomas?
Nope.
Exactly. So, Charles, if you're actually doing right by God, do you ever need to file for divorce?
When you bring it up that way, no, she will.
Exactly. Well, not necessarily. She may. You'll never need to file for divorce because if you're really holding accountable as your house is God's house, every rule in your house abides by God's rules. In that situation, she's put in a position. What are her two options? Option one, even if she doesn't believe, she's going to have to follow. She's going to have to abide by God's laws because that's how your house is run. Or two, she'll have to choose to divorce you because your house is run that way. Now, if you're just, oh, well, I don't want any tension in the house, whatever, I don't want problems. We're supposed to be unity. God doesn't want division. Is God 100% against division, Thomas?
Is God 100% what?
Against division. Is God
No, no, no,
anti-divisions?
no, no.
Exactly. What kind of divisions is he against?
Um, Unjust divisions.
Yeah. It's in one of my most quoted verses that I tell you guys, Romans 16, verse 17 to 18. It says, the ones that cause offenses and divisions contrary to the doctrine. So the only divisions that God is against is if the division is not about doctrine, is not in lined up with doctrine. That's the division he's against. But he is all for division if it's because you're wanting people to follow what the word says. Matter of fact, from that exact verse, it calls for the division. As it says to mark them and also to avoid them. Well, Charles, if you're avoiding them, isn't that dividing you from them?
Yes.
So God, in the same verse that he is saying that it is not okay to have divisions that are not lined up with the doctrine, is calling for divisions that do line up with the doctrine in the very exact section, the very same context. He is calling for true divisions, not divisions that don't line up with the doctrine. So again, back to the main point in 36, the whoredoms with thy lovers. It is not okay when you really think about it, if you already follow God, to be dating somebody who not only is not a follower of God, but is unwilling to work towards it. Now, let me add this caveat. Does that also include people who are not followers of God but are willing to learn, Thomas?
No, they got a little leeway.
Exactly. If they're willing to follow, that's what matters. How could it be, and it talked about that in the New Testament when it brought up about the unbelieving wife or marriage, how could it be that they aren't a believer in God, they aren't a follower of God, but they could be sanctified through you? Because what matters to God is the obedience, obeying what he has required. And what he put in there, and this is a very important point, that they will be sanctified through you if they decide to stay. Otherwise, your children would be defiled. So that points it out right there that if you are married to somebody who is living in sin and you're staying there and you're not requiring the house be of righteousness, not making sure that they abide too, your children are defiled too, not just your wife. Now, how would the children be defiled by the unbelieving party? Well, think about it. They don't need to go to church. They don't need to read the Bible. They don't need to listen in. They don't need to work towards the things of God. We need to let them decide what they're going to do. It's no wonder the children are defiled. They have all this false doctrine being taught to them. But if the person is abiding by God's word, are they going to be teaching the children the false doctrine, Charles?
Say that question again.
If the unbelieving party is still abiding by God, are the children learning false doctrine?
No. If they're abiding by God, no.
Exactly. So what matters is if they're following, not if they believe in that situation. And if they are following and willing to stay with it, that person would end up being a follower and believer in the long run, wouldn't they, Thomas?
Yep.
That's why you're not supposed to leave them. You're supposed to just ensure that your house is run God's way. And if they want to stay, that is awesome and amazing. And if they don't want to stay, they're free to leave. But that's where the separation is. And it all depends on whether or not you're going to stand firm on God's word. So, the whoredoms with thy lovers, yeah. It's still wrong today to date somebody who is unwilling to learn or follow God. That hasn't changed. Now, again, with another caveat, Charles, will you go to the lake of fire for dating somebody who is not a believer or follower in God?
No.
Exactly. Think about Solomon. Did he get condemned for marrying these women? No. He didn't get condemned for anything or said he was wrong for anything until he was following the false doctrines. It was a word of warning, not a commandment against. And this is where we also need to take into a context of the Bible when something is a commandment, when something is a word of warning, when something is a suggestion, in other words, and when something doesn't have to be sinful for it to be wrong. It can be sinful, and it would be definitely wrong then, but just because it's not sinful does not make it right. So, it is wrong to date people who are unwilling to follow, people who are unwilling to learn. You won't go to Lake of Fire for that. However, your house has to be run a certain way, and you're risking a lot of things by being willing to do that. And in the grand scheme of things, when you really think about it, have we seen one example in the Bible, whether David, whether Solomon, have we seen one example in the Bible where somebody gets an unbelieving marriage and that person stays faithful to God? Thomas?
Not that I can recall.
Yeah. There is not one example in the Bible, as far as I have read and I have seen, there is not one example in the Bible where somebody dates, marries somebody of an unbelieving party, and they stay faithful. It's different when you come into God after you're married. But if you've come to God before marriage, there's not one example that we have seen in the Bible where that person married somebody of a different faith and didn't make sure they were already following the faith and they ended up staying faithful. They always started following the other false religion. And let me give you one perfect example of something that seems harmless, but actually is a perfect example of this. Christmas. Christmas is a pagan holiday, worships a pagan god. Yuletide comes from that religion. The songs that are of Christmas relate to that religion. You have some that relate to Jesus, but that came from after they had already made it legal in Catholics to gain more power and prominence and to gain more followers. But even some of the songs, like Make the Yuletide Gay, it's not the gay part there that's sin. The word gay there means happy, not homosexual. It's the Yuletide part. The Yuletide comes from the pagan religion of Christmas, not the Catholic Christian farce connection to it. It's still in there. The Yule log is from there. So the Christmas tree also is from there. So the point of it is you're still doing that idol worship. You're still doing these things. So, yeah, you're taking a risk. You may not end up in the lake of fire in the grand scheme. It may not happen. Things could work out. They become a believer. It sounds good. But you're definitely putting yourself in a very bad position. And as Christians, is our job to find how thin the line is between sin and righteousness? Or is our job something else, Charles?
Something else.
And what is that something else?
Not to find the loopholes and the technicalities, but to follow God in all his ways, all in 100% truth and wholeheartedly.
Exactly. So if I truly love God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength, am I going to be worshiping or am I going to be celebrating Christmas?
No.
No, exactly. Because, yeah, technically, loophole, you could, technically. But am I really loving God with all my heart if I'm doing that? You know what is a perfect, what Christmas and celebrating is a perfect example of, Thomas?
Me. I
Nope.
don't know.
Celebrating Christmas, just like here we're talking about the whore, celebrating Christmas is like being married to a wife and spending alone time because you're friends with your ex-girlfriend. You may not sleep with her. You may not get intimate with her. That's possible. But are you really showing love to your wife if you're hanging out alone with your girlfriend, going to dinners, going to the movies alone? Are you really showing love to your wife by doing that?
Cool.
Tom? Exactly. So if you're celebrating Christmas, Charles, if you're celebrating Christmas, Thomas, if I'm celebrating Christmas, that's not really giving all our heart to God. We're looking for loopholes in that case. Well, we're not sleeping together. We're not getting intimate together. Yeah, but she's your ex-girlfriend. I'm your wife. That's not okay. Yeah, but I haven't cheated on you. But it's still wrong. That's the type of loophole that we're making by doing that. And that's just one example. This is again back to 36. Why? You need to be with people that are trying to follow God. So before we continue with this, as after this one last question, we're going to continue with Charles doing his explanation. So be prepared, Charles. What would be something that you can do that is a good thing that you like hardcore you should do before you get into a relationship with a woman? We'll go Charles for one, and then Thomas for one, and then we'll get back to the main explanation.
Hardcore of what I'm gonna do before a relationship.
Just one thing.
Um, vetting them, not just through what they say, but through their social media, what they post, every word they say, every social media post they post. I'm vetting all of it.
Good. Vetting them, looking at what they actually have posted, and not just what they posted now, but recently, what led up to. Because somebody could show a change. You could see where somebody they were pointing out all this sinful, all this anti-God stuff, and then you can see what they post recently, and that's a difference maker. All right, Thomas, what's something else you could do as hardcore that you should do before you get in a relationship with somebody? Don't forget to unmute.
See if they're willing to join Bible study and be on every day. And
Yeah,
yeah.
perfect. See if they're willing to join and be on Bible study every day. Both of those are perfect. Because what if somebody is on Bible study, but all they're doing is pretending to listen in? How would you know if you don't pay attention to what they post? How would you know if you don't pay attention to how they talk or what they care about or what they discuss? So, is having them on Bible study enough? No. You got to make sure that they're what's actually lining up. And then on the same token, let's say all their posts are good, but they're unwilling to be on Bible study. And they, even if they say they're willing, but they never actually show up. They go on Bible study once over the course of a whole month. And I'll give you one last one. You need to give it time. Don't jump into the relationship the moment you see that you like them and they like you. Give it at least 30 days. At least before you're even willing to go out on a date. Chop it up with them, see if they're willing to come on Bible study, check out who they are and everything, all that good stuff. Give it a minimum of 30 days before you actually go out on a date. Let it simmer and see if it's actually worthwhile. That way, you don't waste your time on somebody that ain't worth it. If somebody, and on another note, if somebody does come along that is willing to follow, you haven't cut them off. And at the same token, you haven't put all this energy into somebody that you can't be with as a biblical Christian, anyways. Not if you want the best quality situation, at least. All these trace back to making sure that you're not going through the whoredom with your lovers, with your relationships. All right. Now go ahead and continue, Charles, with your explanation.
All right. So, verse 38, and I will judge thee as women that break wedlock and shed blood are judged, and I will give thee blood and fury and jealousy. I will judge thee as women break wedlock. So he's going to judge you the same way women are judged when they
Mm-hmm.
break wedlock. I had to go to the definition. A primitive root to commit adultery, figuratively to apostatize. It just sounds like you cheating on your husband. That's all it sounds like.
Yeah.
Oh
Yep.
yeah, so he's gonna judge you the same way, which is way harsher then than it is now.
Yep.
1,000 times harsher the way you were judged then from cheating on your husband
What's the
versus now.
punishment for it in the Old Testament?
Oh, you got me. I should know. It's been so long since we talked about that.
I'm not going to give you the answer this time because I want you to be able to back it up with verses. So
Make it homework.
go ahead and yeah, I was going to give Thomas a chance though. Just like
Oh, never mind.
when he can't figure something out. Got to give you both a chance before I turn it into homework.
All right.
Thomas,
Give me the question again, please.
what was the punishment for a woman in the Old Testament law for cheating on her husband?
Death.
Yeah. Do you know any verses to back it up or anything to back that up?
No, not off the top of the head, but I remember reading about it.
All right. It was in the same section as when we also read about rape. If somebody cried out, as one would if they were actually being raped, then they were not put to death. In that same section there, where if somebody had done it, that somebody was betrothed, that was just talking about a fiance. If they didn't cry out, they were to be put to death. In that same section of Leviticus where we went through the different laws, we also got to a point where if a woman who was married cheated on her husband, that she was to be stoned to death, or not stoned to death, she was to be put to death too. So, Charles, that's your homework.
The verse to back it up.
The verse to back it up. Because I gave you guys the section that also tells you that I could figure it out and give it to you. But you guys don't even know the section. How are you supposed to be able to research it? How are you supposed to be able to answer somebody? Remember, it's not enough to know what's accurate. You need to be able to back it up to show people. All right. So that's your homework, Charles. Tomorrow, what is the verse section or the grouping, where it's actually at, and what does it actually say about when a woman cheats on her husband? All right, go ahead and continue with your explanation of stays.
Can you hear me?
Yep,
Let me just write this down.
not a problem.
Okay, I just have to write that last bit down. So the last verse, verse 39, and I will also give thee into their hand, and they shall throw down thine eminent place, and shall break down thy high places. They shall strip thee also of thy clothes, and shall take thy fair jewels, and leave thee bare naked. I'm gonna give you into their hand, and that there he's talking about was the ones that the children of Israel hated, that because I got that wrong earlier, and the ones that they loved that are gonna go against them, and they're gonna get rid of those high places. Children of Israel should have been got rid of them, but your enemies will get rid of them. Strip your clothes down, take your jewels, and leave you naked. Leave you naked in the open. And that's all I got for my that's the last part of my section. Oh man.
Exactly.
So these people are gonna humble you before you humbled yourself. Mm-mm-mm. God works in funny ways.
Yeah, he does. Good. All right. Now, one thing I would say, Charles, as a little point of reference, not correction, but a heads up, you should have known that it was talking about death in 38 because of what it says in 38. I will give thee blood in fury and jealousy. What would that mean? Well, you're going to die.
It was I was thinking about that, but I have to make sure I be able to back it up. I don't want to do that without having like the verse to back it up.
Well,
Like I was
remember,
thinking that in my head. It's like maybe it's that, but I'm like, I wish I had that verse to back it up.
but then, and this is what you're doing the homework for, but in that same token, you have the verse backing it up in 38 because it says blood, fury, and jealousy. Blood in fury and jealousy. Well, think about those concepts. If I'm giving you blood in fury and jealousy, what am I doing? At
Yeah, you about
what
to
in
murder
what
me.
situation you're about to murder? Yeah, about to be murdered. You getting murked. It's over. TJ Khaled. So, anyways, now, does anybody have any comments or questions as we go to the second section? Now would be the time to raise your hand. All right. Then Thomas, go ahead when you're ready. Don't forget to unmute though.
Okay. Question: Is he still angry?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. If I tell you I'm going to give you blood in fury and jealousy, am I calm saying that?
Nah.
This is something to keep in mind for future reference. Pay attention to the words he uses, because certain words will give you that answer where you shouldn't have had to ask me. And I understand you having to ask because you're still learning this, but those are cues to let you know. When he talked
Okay.
about, I gave you everything and you treated it like it didn't matter, love and all that, those are emotional things that are not aggressive, right? So we knew at that moment, we're talking about an extreme sadness. We're not talking about an extreme anger. But when he said to provoke me to anger, well, in what way would somebody say you're trying to provoke me to anger? Would they say that in sadness?
No,
No.
definitely not.
That's in our phrasing today. If I was to use the most similar thing, I would say you're trying to piss me off. There is no way for me to tell you you're trying to piss me off in a sad and somber way and it be realistic. Now I could do it. You're really trying to piss me off. It don't sound right, do it?
No, I sound crazy.
Yeah. It sounds like a murderer if it's saying
Yeah,
that really like a
exactly.
psychopath is like,
Some
you're really
Dexter
trying
stuff
to
right
piss.
there.
Yeah. So there are certain turns of phrases and words that will let you know the emotion that's being felt based on the expression and at realistically what would be a type of emotion felt where somebody would say those words. There's no realistic thing where somebody who's really sad is going to say you're trying to piss me off, and there's no realistic thing where somebody is going to say that I loved you when nobody loved you and I was here for you when nobody else cared. Nobody's going to be saying that in a form of a fit of rage. It doesn't match it realistically with the emotions the person would have to say those things. And this is, write this down in your notes real quick before we continue. This is what I meant, or this is what is meant when I said that putting yourself in the shoes of the person speaking. I'm not saying how would you feel. I'm saying in what realistic emotion would the person be feeling to say those things? If you were going to say those things, what would be a realistic situation or emotion you'd be feeling in order to say those things? That's what I mean by putting yourself in the position of the speaker. Not how would you feel, not how would you react. What would be a realistic situation or a realistic emotion you would have to feel in order to say those things? That's what I'm talking about. And I want you both to write that down in your notes for like understanding it. Because that's the example I was given in order to understand it better. Does that make more sense than when I explained it last time, Charles?
No, it makes sense.
Okay. Does it
It
make
I just
more
have
sense
to
than last time? Like, or is it,
not more
did you?
sense. I have to pay attention to the emphasis of the emotion. That's one thing I have a problem. I still have a problem doing is, when I'm reading, what's the if I need to put that kind of emotion out there, I need to. If I'm not paying attention to it, then I'll probably miss the context. Like if there's anger in it, I'm gonna miss the context if I don't read it in a certain type of way. If there's sadness in it, like I did days ago, I'm gonna miss the
Yeah.
context.
Yeah. And that's one thing that you guys want to keep in mind when you're reading. Everything that you're reading, you may have to reread it. There have been times where I'm reading it and I'm reading it like a book, and I get down to like the fourth or fifth verse, and I'm like, oh, I read that wrong. There's an emotion shown here. And I have to reread it from the beginning with that emotion. If you need to reread it because you realized it, go ahead and reread it with the emotion. You need to be able to understand what you're reading in its entirety, not just the words used, but what are actually meant by the words used. And you're not doing that if you're not taking the emotion of the speaker into account or who they're talking to or what's the situation. As a good example, if I'm telling somebody personally that, like a one-on-one, that you haven't been doing your part, versus if I tell a whole group of people, you have not been doing your part. One of them is a lot harsher or a lot more impactful than the other. Because in a realistic situation, why would you go as far as to tell somebody, bringing them to the side when it's not a sin? Why would you go as far as to pull them to the side to tell them? Because you really mean it with that individual. But if you tell it as a whole, that could kind of be platitudes. That could just be good phrasing to say things that sound good for the people, right? So it changes the context when you're talking to an individual versus a group of people. All those make a difference. And all those are taken into account if you think about not just what's being said, but what would be the emotion of the person speaking? What would be the situation of who they're talking to? Are they talking to one person, or are they talking to a group? Are they mad? Are they sad? Are they excited? All of that matters. All right. Now, Thomas, go ahead.
All right, we're reading Ezekiel chapter 16, verses 40 through 44. Give it a couple seconds. They shall also bring up a company against thee, and they shall stone thee with stones, and thrust thee through them with their swords. And they shall burn thy houses with fire, and execute judgment upon thee in the sight of many women. And I will cause thee to cease from playing the harlot, and thou also shalt give no hire any more. So will I make my fury toward thee to rest, and my jealousy shall depart from thee, and I will be quiet, and I will be no more angry, because thou hast not remembered the days of thy youth, but hast fretted me in all these things. Behold, therefore I also will recompense thy ways upon thine head, said the Lord God. And thou also shalt not commit these lewdness about above all thine abominations. Behold, everyone that useth proverbs shall use this proverb against thee, saying, as is the mother, so is her daughter. He just mic dropped at the end.
Yeah, I started butting up when I read that.
That's crazy. I totally imagined him just mic dropping and walking off. That's crazy. All right, let me read 40 real quick. No. They shall also bring up a company against thee, and they shall stone thee with stones and thrust thee through with their swords. So we're still talking about all their lovers and the people that love and the people that hate it. So now he's bringing them all together and pretty much setting them against him. So in the midst of all that, he's talking like, hey, they about to be stoning y'all and slaying y'all with swords. And then in 41, let me read that. And they shall burn thine houses with fire and execute judgment upon thee in the sight of many women. And I will cause thee to cease from playing the harlot, and thou also shalt give no hire anymore. Okay, so now they really like after they done in the process of thrusting and killing them with stones and stabbings, they also burning down the houses and stuff like that. And they asking judgment left and right uh in the sight of other of the women and and pretty much stop them from playing portraying this horse act and thou also shall give no hire anymore, and nobody's gonna like mess with them despite that they tried to pay them. In
Exactly.
42, let me read that.
Well,
So will
no,
I make
not even nobody messed with them. Think about it from whose perspective it's talking from. Did it say nobody will give you hire?
Uh, also shall not give no hire anymore. Because God is saying in general, he's going to make it where to nobody's going to, you know.
Ah, is that what he said?
Let me read 41 again.
It's
And
the
they shall
right
burn them.
part, but you read it wrong.
Right. Let me read it one more time. And that shall burn thine houses with fire and execute judgment upon thee in the sight of many women. And I will cause thee to cease from playing the harlot, and thou also, and you also shall give no hire anymore. Oh, so it's the opposite. They aren't. Hold on. You also should give hire no more. So they're not going to be selling their selves anymore. To
Yeah, it's not the ones buying, it's the ones
yeah.
selling that are stopping.
Yep.
I will cause thee to cease from playing the harlot. Well, who is thee? You.
Yep. Exactly.
And thou also shalt give no hire anymore. Well, who is thou?
You.
You. So,
Okay.
yeah, they're going to burn your houses down and execute judgment upon you. But I'm stopped from this point on. You will not play the harlot anymore. You will not be the whore. You will not be working this work no more. See what I'm
Okay.
saying?
Yep. And 42. So now we have.
But one part I wanted to point out, why did it say in the sight of many women? You didn't put that part in your explanation.
Um, just to show who's the true one, true God, the true Lord.
Yeah,
Like they exactly.
this is not going to be something that's done in secret. This is going to be done in front of a bunch of people. Now, this goes out to point out something else as a lesson in New Testament that people forget. And another thing that people, and this is the opposite, unlike before, where people don't say it's wrong as a mass majority, but it is, this is something that people say is wrong, but is actually not. So I'll put the question to you, Thomas. What is it that is shown in 41 to be the right thing to do that in today's society, as a mass majority, people of God say is the wrong thing to do?
Oh, don't judge him. Why you asking all this judgment?
No,
Okay.
close, but not quite. Charles?
You're talking about something you corrected me on a while ago. Correction and punishment in front of others versus behind the scenes.
Yes.
Mm, gotcha.
The calling people out in front of others. We've actually had people in these Bible studies who left because of that. Well, what if you called me out? What if you said something to me? I haven't done that because you haven't done anything wrong to do that. But if you did do wrong, as a loving discipler of God, it's my requirement, it's my job to let you know, even if it might hurt your feelings. As a matter of fact, as I remember, Thomas, this is something we had to get past. We had
Yeah.
to get past this specifically. Well, I mean, you could have pulled me to the side, like, yeah, if I was going based on what I want to do, but I don't get that option. The only time I can pull you to the side is if you do something wrong against me personally that is not a sin, but it's just something wrong against me personally. That's the only time I get that option. But if you say something that is sinful, or you do something sinful on Bible study, I have to call you out right then and there because that's what the Bible calls for. That's what it requires of me according to scripture and context. I don't get that option. And here, they're getting judged. Everything is happening in the sight of many women. It didn't even just say in front of women, in front of other women. It went out of its way to point out in front of many women. And remember, the women in this example that God is using, the whore is the children of Israel. So if that's the children of Israel that are playing the whore, then who would the many women be? Charles?
You said if the children of Israel would be the whore, who are the women?
Yeah, who would the many women be then? If the children of Israel are the whore.
I should know this. The other people, I guess the other nations that are supposed to go against them.
Yeah. The other nations. So this judgment is going to be happening against you in front of a lot of other nations. All these other nations. Now that goes into another point that's a deeper part that I would doubt you guys would have been able to find at this point in your journey. Why would it matter for other nations to see this if they're not even following God at this point? Thomas?
Uh, in relation to the grand scale of what is to come later down the line, this story is to carry on not only through his people, but throughout
Yes.
the entire world.
Exactly. God is having this judgment of Israel be so open and in front of the world to lead others of the world to salvation, to turn away from the world and turn to God. Otherwise, there is no other reason outside of one. So you got two reasons. Either one, it's to show the world that God is God, and two, it's to show the world that he doesn't give special treatment to the children of Israel when they're in sin. All peoples are equal in that aspect. And that leads to the availability of the salvation of others. Because if you were to punish the children of Israel and it not being in front of other people, they'd still have their judgment. It still would have happened. It wouldn't have impacted anybody else. So why would it matter that others see? Because later down the line, it can lead to others following. And remember this, Christianity, Jesus, is not when people first started converting to following God. The first written down person to convert to God is actually Caleb, who was a Kenizzite, who actually came over from Egypt when they left Egypt. He's the first one that we have written down by name that was not of the children of Israel, that got grafted into the children of Israel because he had obeyed as much as he did, and he had a more faith than even the other people that of Israel when they went against the country of Ai, or Ai, as people say it today. So this judgment is not just for their punishment and not just to show God's power to the world, but also for the salvation of others as well. Now, go ahead and continue with your explanation from 42 on.
Okay. So let me read 42 real quick. So will I make my fury towards thee to rest? My jealousy shall depart from thee, and I will be quiet, and I would be no more angry. So it was like God kind of ceasing fire in a sense and stepping back from all his fury amongst his people there. And then in
Well, what else is necessary to point out about that for you personally?
I'll make my fury towards thee to rest, and my jealousy shall depart from thee, and I will be quiet, and will be no more angry. The fact that he's saying he's going to be quiet is pretty interesting. It
Nope.
sounds like he's
There's
just giving
something for
up.
you personally that I mean, like you specifically, Thomas,
Oh,
that it
okay.
needs to be pointed out about this.
Something about me, like in relation to?
Yep. No, not like outside, but like specifically for you.
So I will make my fury towards thee to rest, and my jealousy shall depart from thee, and I will be quiet, And I would be no more angry. Oh, in relation to like you and I, just how what we went through in a sense.
Nope.
I'm not. I don't know.
All right. Now I said it like that because I didn't want to give away the answer. So I'm going to say it the same way. Charles, what about that verse has to do with you specifically?
Honestly, I don't know.
What is the last words that it says in that section, Thomas?
And will be no more angry.
Now, why does that matter for you personally?
I still don't know.
That was your cue to let you know the emotion that God is feeling
Oh, I see
for
what
when
you're
you were
saying.
reading.
You know, you want to know something crazy? I was
Uh,
thinking about that, and I even thought you were going to say something regarding to this, but I chose just to continue reading angry. I literally was thinking about it, like maybe I should stop sounding angry at 43, but I didn't do it. Doubting myself. That's
exactly.
wild.
It was literally right there for you, and you were reading it like a book. You weren't reading it with the anger. Remember the attitude we talked about yesterday when you actually are irritated. You have a different noise to you when you're actually irritated. You don't sound the same as when you're happy or when you're regular calm. When you're irritated, you get snippy. You get real short with your words. You may say the same amount of words, but they're shorter. So there's a tone of voice to your anger. But when you were reading this, you're reading it like a book. You weren't reading it with the emotions that God has. So when you got through to that verse, what should you have done?
Just change my tone.
Just change your tone? Charles, when he got to that verse, what should he have done?
Don't read 43 and 44 with that anger, with that emotion.
Huh?
Can you hear me?
Nope. I heard you. But
Oh,
that's not the
okay.
right answer. What did I tell you guys to do when you find out the emotions you read were incorrect in how you were reading? Thomas,
The emotion. Oh, go ahead.
I'll go back and reread it.
go back and reread it. Exactly. When you realize that the way you were reading it is wrong, you should have paused, gone back, and reread it from the beginning with the emotion that you were supposed to have. Now, from that moment on, when we look at it, I will be no more angry, because thou hast not remembered the days of thy youth, but hast fretted me in all these things. He's still going to have a little bit of anger when he says that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But is it going to be the same level of anger as what it would be from 42 up?
No.
Exactly. It's kind of like when you're reprimanding your child. There's a part where you get the escalation. But then when you point out and you start getting into the solution part, you still got some of that anger, but it starts to taper off a little bit. So when you're reading this, so will I make my fury toward thee to rest, and my jealousy shall depart from thee, and I will be quiet and will be no more angry, because thou hast not remembered the days of thy youth, but hast fretted me in all these things. Behold, therefore I also will recompense thy way upon thine head, saith the Lord God. And thou shalt not commit the lewdness above all thine abominations. Behold, everyone that uses proverbs shall use this proverb against thee, saying, as is the mother, so is her daughter. Now, you notice how I tapered off there from the aggressive at the beginning down to the calm? We can see from where he's going, he's angry, pissed off, talking up until 42. And even at the beginning of 42, so will I make my fury toward thee to rest. Is that something you would say being still pissed off?
No.
Exactly. But in 41, and they shall burn thine houses with fire. Is that something you would say calm?
Nope.
So that lets you know from there where the separation is. At the end of 41 is the finishing up of his pissed off anger, to where in 42, now it's more resolute anger. It's not pissed off, it's a resolution.
Gotcha.
So did you catch that too, Charles? Or do you understand that now, Charles? I know you didn't catch it. Do you understand that?
I understand it now. I didn't catch it earlier.
Okay. So burning thine houses with fire, that's an aggressive statement. It's kind of like somebody says, well, you can't know the emotion that somebody feels when they're texting. Thomas, you have texted me many times in anger. Have I ever been confused when you were actually angry or irritated?
Probably not.
This is the reason why I was able to know. Because of this right here. When you're dealing with somebody, I'll give you a perfect example. With dealing with your dad, your baby mom, your friends that you've had, or coworkers, even if you've talked to them for more than a couple days, when they text you, there are certain people that if you're not focused on who the person is or what is going on, you can't tell if they're pissed off or if it's just confusion in text, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. But if your dad or your baby mom was pissed off at you, you can kind of tell from the text message if she's angry, right? Even if
Mm-hmm.
she denies it, even if he denies it.
Mm-hmm.
See, when you take into account there, what you're doing is you're taking into account why they would do that. But as I've said before, if you look at humanity as a whole, there's not a lot of difference between us. You look at what would be a scenario where somebody would say these words, you can know like 99% of the time what the emotion they're expressing from the text message, whether or not they're honest with you. Because and the reason I say that is because if somebody has a negative emotion in a text, how likely are they to be honest, Charles, when you ask them about it?
Not likely at all.
Not likely at all. It's kind of like when a woman says, "Oh, I'm fine." Thomas, is she actually fine when she says it like that?
Nope.
Exactly. So if you guys were just talking and you were asking a girl to go out on a date to go get some burgers, and she responds with, "I'm fine," or "I'm cool," is that a calm text?
Nope.
Exactly. But if she were to respond in the same thing, "Thanks, but I'm not really hungry right now, but I appreciate it." That one could be a little bit more confusing, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So how somebody responds, what words they use, and how they phrase it, it can give you cues to what they mean just by the words and how they phrase it. How short they are, what type of words, how severe the words are. All of that stuff plays a part. Same thing with reading and getting the context. The specific words used, when they're used, what's the overall context that we've been reading about. All of that gives you those cues to let you know, oh, this person is pissed off. This person is sad. This person is happy. Whatever the emotion is at the time. This person is ready for war. That's not even an emotion. That's just a statement of being. But all of that stuff can be true. And you're able to understand which one it is based on what was used in the word and what timing of, and what is around. Make sense?
Yep.
All right. Charles, you got that too?
I got it too. Another cue I missed.
Yep. It's okay. It's gonna take you guys a while to get there. I mean, remember, I've been studying since 2016. Well, actually 2012. So I got a long ways ahead of you guys.
I thought you was
Charles, you
gonna
won't.
be, I thought you was gonna do the jokes since the summer of '69. I don't know why I thought you
Summer
were gonna
of
say.
69. No, 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 no. So yeah, that's the point. I've been studying for well over 14 years. You guys have only been studying, Charles for about 2 years, Thomas for about one. Beyond that, you guys were kind of just either not involved at all or just following along what somebody tells you. So it's not surprising that you guys are going to take a while. Realistically, I don't see you guys getting it like that for at least another couple years for Charles and another 3, 4 years for Thomas, to where I don't have to say it ever. But you guys will get better over time if you're practicing this. But if you guys don't practice this 3, 4 years from now, you're going to be in the same place. That's why, Charles, I know when you're not practicing something or you're not focused on something because it's been so much stuff that you've been shown, you should have already been able to catch it. All right. So go ahead and continue, Thomas, with the final part of your explanation.
All right, so 43, let me read that. Because thou hast not remembered the days of thy youth, but hast fretted me in all these things. Behold, therefore I also will recompense thy ways upon thy head, saith the Lord God, and thou should not commit this lewdness above all things, all thine abominations. All right, so pretty much God is saying, all right, look, you guys forgot about me in your youth and all the things that I've done for you. And now, because, hold
Well,
on, hold on. Because thou hast, okay.
did he say what I have done for you in your youth?
Hold on, because you have not remembered the days of thy youth. Oh, no, 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 just not what he's done, but just
What
what
would
is
be a
taking
phrase
place
today that we use that would be similar to that?
because thou, I'm not sure. Not too great with phrases.
All right. Charles, what would be a phrase that means the same thing that we use today?
Because thou hast not remembered the days of thy youth. Could I use the one I used days ago? You forget where you came from, or
Yeah, that's
yeah,
perfect.
yeah, yeah.
You forgot where you came from.
Okay. So because you forgot where you came from, and
What
hold
does
on,
fretted
Freddie,
mean?
I'm about to look that up right now.
Mm-hmm. And no, it is not fritter. Although
I wasn't even thinking that.
that does sound good right now.
um, Strong's a primitive root to quiver with any violence, emotion, especially anger or fear. Be afraid, stand in awe, disquiet, fall out, fret, move, provoke. Provoke. That's a good word for it.
Uh, I wouldn't say that. If I'm provoking somebody, does that say what I'm provoking them to?
No. Wake, rage, shake, tremble.
Yeah. Can you actually explain that with just one word? Or
No.
would you need a phrase to explain that?
I never heard of fretted, so I'm trying to learn right now.
Well, no, no, based on the definition.
Oh, no, no, no. I mean, probably a sentence or so, a couple
Yeah.
words.
So what would be a sentence or something that could explain what the definition as a whole is?
It's all over the place. I honestly don't even know what it means with all these strong, different definitions.
All right. Well, without instead of just giving up, envision what a person would be like with each of these if that's what they're doing or being or feeling.
Say that one more time.
Envision what a person would be like if that's what they're doing, feeling, or being.
Okay, being afraid, standing in awe, saying
And then
disquiet.
think about which one matches the circumstance. So, does fear match the circumstance?
Let me read that first sentence real quick
Oh,
because
no,
I
no,
have
no.
not.
That's one of those. Keep in mind the whole context. What have we been reading about? What has been the emotion?
It has been anger, but now it's like dying down.
Yeah. So, but that would still relate to the anger, though, right?
Yeah.
In this context. So then, would fear work?
So I can just say anger because but has angered me in all these things.
But is anger enough severity wise?
No,
When it
because
says
anger.
anger in there, what does it say by it? You said it
Right.
earlier.
Yeah, we spoken about anger, how it been levels to it.
No, no, no. I mean in the dictionary this time. What did it bring up about it? So it's the fear or the anger to the what?
I don't recall what I said.
Well, you don't have to recall. Go back to the definition.
So I'm here now. It says a primitive root to quiver with any violent
Yeah,
emotions, especially
quiver.
anger. Quiver.
Do you know what quivering means?
What I'm thinking of quiver, I'm thinking of somebody like sitting there low key kind of shaking and stuff.
Yeah, quivering is shaking.
Okay. So shaking in anger.
Yeah. You ever
Okay.
been so pissed off that you are literally shaking in anger?
No.
No? You've never been
That's
that
another
mad?
level. Nah, man, I'm not a mad angry person like that.
Oh, that's interesting. Charles, I know you've been so mad you've shaken in anger.
I was like, Thomas, that's why I rose my hand. Thomas, there's nothing in life that pisses you off so much that your hands start to shaking. Your eyes about to pop out your head. You've never been that mad before?
Let's just say this: I ain't never been in the street fight, bro. I'm the one that talk out of it.
I mean,
No,
separate, no, you don't have to be in a street fight. Women have pissed me off to the point where my eyes about to pop out of my
you
head.
right, you
My
right. Heather,
mom
Heather, Heather,
has
Heather for
pissed me
sure.
off.
Yeah, Heather for
I
sure.
was gonna say my mom, my little
Yeah,
brother,
okay. I
um,
was gonna say.
Thomas. Video games have pushed me to that point. Call of Duty has pushed me to that point. I
Yeah.
was just an angry little kid growing up. I was angry at a lot of things, but there are other things separate from the street life that will piss you off so much. You're ah, like you gotta
Yeah, I
grind
remember
your
now.
teeth.
Uh-huh. It was one time I was so angry at Heather, I was like, bro, I'm about to go to jail because I'm about to hit this guy.
Yeah. And you don't do nothing in the situation, but you're still that mad. So
Yeah.
for like, and here's one type of situation that has gotten me this type of angry. When I'm the one telling the truth and I'm the one who's the victim in the situation, not the aggressor, but I'm the one who's being treated as the enemy and the one who's actually being punished when I wasn't the one in the wrong. That is one of the biggest ones for me where I get so angry. Now I can't fight somebody because it's not like they're fighting me. It's a sort of feeling of hopelessness in the anger. Like I want to get this out. I want to do something, but I can't because it would only make it worse. Now in
That was a
God's
great way to
position,
put it right there.
yeah.
Like you feel like you're hopelessness. You can't do nothing because they ain't hitting on you, so you can't fight them. But I
Yeah.
understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, like you want to fight, you want to do something, but you know if you do, it'll only make it worse for you. Like I've had so many times in my life because of my anger I had in the past where I wanted to harm somebody. I wanted to fight somebody. I wanted to do these things, but I was in a position where I know if I do, you're going to call the cops.
Mm-hmm.
If I do, you're going to tell the parents. If I do, I'm going to be the one in trouble. And then especially in situations where I'm not the one doing wrong, but I'm being blamed as if I was. Now,
Exactly.
if I do fight you or I do swing or something, I would make everything you said true. I would now be the one in the wrong. So I can't do anything. And so you hold it in yourself and you're almost like shaking, and like I could even like literally, if you envision this anger and you clench your fist as tight as you can feel that rage just by doing that.
All
Like you
right.
tense up and you want to tense more.
All right.
That's
Let me give this a chance.
yeah.
All right. So 43 pretty much saying, because y'all don't remember where y'all came from, y'all got me quivering in anger from all these things that y'all have done. So
I wouldn't say quiver though, because that's not something a 5-year-old would
y'all
normally
got me
understand.
shaking. Y'all got me shaking in anger from all these things y'all have
Yeah.
done. That to this point, this is what's gonna happen. Y'all gonna lay in the bed that y'all made in a
Yeah.
discussion, and thou shalt not commit to thy wilderness above. Hold on one second.
This,
And
not die.
huh?
You said thou shalt not commit thy.
I was reading the last sentence.
Yeah,
And
you
thou
said thou
shalt
shalt
not.
not commit this. I mean, you said thou shalt not commit thy, but it's thou shalt not commit this through this.
Oh yeah, you're right. And thou shalt not commit this lewdness above all thine abominations. Let me see what lewdness means.
That's another word that means different today than it meant back then.
A plan, especially a bad one.
Do you know what
Let's
lewdness
see.
means today?
No.
Lewdness is more of a connotation of sexual, dressing lewd. You're trying to show off your body.
Okay. So in the Strong's here, it's a form of planning, especially like a bad plan.
Yeah, scheming, in other
So
words.
yeah. So and thou shalt not commit these schemes above all thine abominations.
Now, would above be how would say that today, considering it, or would it be better on better for some other turn of phrase?
Something else better would definitely fit.
Yeah. So what's another way to say above in today's language?
And thou shalt not over. Simple? Or no, is that too simple?
I would say that it doesn't work in this situation.
Okay.
What's another way to say above?
Terrible word replacements. I need to work like a quiz game or something on this.
Remember, it doesn't have to be just one word, though.
Yeah.
What's another way to say above something?
Um Charles, you got me?
I want you to give it a shot. Try to think about it for a second. If
Above
I'm
something.
telling you that this box is above another, then what is this box instead of the word above another and not using over?
It's higher.
Remember,
See,
you
that's what
don't
I'm
use one
saying.
word.
Oh, okay, okay.
That was your hint earlier.
Yeah. It's greater than.
No, you keep thinking about it in terms of quality.
You want to give Charles a shot?
Yep. Charles?
In the generic sense, right?
Yep. If you had boxes, one was on top of another. Ah, damn it.
On
Never
top of, yeah,
mind.
you just did it. You
We
just
already
did
said it.
it.
We got him, bro.
This is why I don't like explaining it too much, because it's hard to explain without saying the answer. Like sometimes.
I'm glad you said that, Matt, because when you said the box thing to Thomas, I had it in my head before he said it, but I was like, oh, he said it. Okay, here you go. It don't sound like it gets anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Screwed up. So, anyways, on top, that's the other way to look at it. Now, the word for above here, so think about it. All the abominations, when we look at sins of God, Is there anything greater than doing all the abominations that they've already done?
Oh boy. Um, blasphemy of the Holy Spirit, right?
Well, yes, but this is the point, is that they've already done that, haven't they?
Why? Yeah. So no, at this point, in this
Yeah.
aspect.
So above in the form of greater doesn't really
Mm.
work like that. So that version of the context has to be canceled out because that's a contradiction. We already are at the greatest type of sins, the blaspheming of the Spirit, the blasphemy of God. We're already there. So then, if
So
above cannot mean greater, then above would have to be the other kind of above, which would be
okay,
a location based.
I see what you're saying. So like, pretty much, he's saying like, commit all this lewdness on top of the abomination.
Yeah. So after I pay you back for all these things, you are not going to be doing these schemes on top of all the abominations that you've already done.
Yeah,
That's what God is saying there.
gotcha.
And the reason we can know that is because looking at the context of the sins they've already committed, is there any greater sins? No. They're already doing it. Then if it can't be a greater version of above, you look at it on top of instead of above is greater, but a location based.
Man, I was stuck
So
on greater.
yeah, you were. That's why I say you kept on looking at quality. But this is the thing. When you're looking at these words and these things, you have to think about the different reference of what it can be. Above can be related to other words in which ways? Well, it can be related to them in quality or quantity, and it can also be related to them in location. And if it can't be quality or quantity, then location would have to be it because it canceled out from the context. So now, when he says on top of, is that being literal location or metaphorical on top of?
Metaphorical, like y'all ain't about to keep adding to all the stuff y'all already been doing.
Exactly.
And then
And
in
that's how you'd be able to figure out that part for yourself in the future. Looking at the
gotcha,
different ways that the word can be used, not just what it means, but what it can be used for. All right,
gotcha.
go ahead
And
with the final one.
kind of what we were speaking on earlier, how all this stuff is done in front of everybody. So now we have Proverbs, and we speaking on these instances that took place then and now as an example in life lessons we can apply, which is crazy. But let me read it. 44, behold, everyone that uses proverbs shall use this proverb against thee, saying, as is the mother, so is the daughter. Dang. So now they use as a proverb against them. And so whenever you hear the reference, as is a mother, so is a daughter, they're referring to the children of Israel and Jerusalem.
Yep. And the sinfulness and forgetting where they came from and all the wicked abominations and all that. Now,
Yeah.
here's the question. I'll go to Thomas, I'll go to Charles first and then Thomas. What is different about this proverb, them being used as proverbs, than what we've read before with the proverbs?
Um, I don't know because I have to remember what we talked about before.
All right. Thomas?
This proverb is um directed to certain people. Well, the
No.
other proverbs,
So
oh, okay.
that's what we've seen that every time with the proverbs we've read before.
Okay.
You shall be a proverb unto others. We've always read that. The difference is this is the first time that it was put into the form of a phrase. We have never seen it be like that before. This is the first time that God actually said what the proverb is word for word instead of in concept. every time that we've read about a proverb in the past through our Bible studies, we've always read it as, and you will be a proverb to the other nations. And this shall be a proverb to the other nations because of what you've done or because of this. This is the first time that we've seen where something is said that it's going to be a proverb and also said how the proverb actually is stated, word for word. You didn't notice that, did you, Charles? Or Thomas?
Oh, I loved it too. How he put it.
No.
Mic dropping.
Yeah. As is the mother, so is the daughter. Now, keep in mind, this is in reference to the children of Israel, the whoredom. So, what would that mean based on the context then? Thomas and then Charles.
Um, how it is now. Hold on. Let me gather myself before I just say some crazy stuff. Mm. Come back to me. Come back to me.
All right. Now, as you're thinking about it, though, keep in mind that everyone that uses the proverb is going to say it like this, but remember what it's in reference to. This whole thing is in reference to the children of Israel and how they've been behaving. So, how would, and this is your hint for both of you, how would saying, as is the mother, so is our daughter, how would that relate to the children of Israel and what they've been doing and what God's been explaining? That's your hint. Charles?
Sorry for the silence. I'm still trying to think on how it relates.
All right. Thomas, you wanted me coming back to you?
Yeah. So it related to Jerusalem as a mother, correct? Trying to break this down.
Yep.
Okay. And then the people of it were acting the same as the mother. So I don't have it, man. I'm trying to break it down, but I ain't got it.
Okay. And since I gave him a second chance, Charles, I'll give you a second chance.
So Thomas got the mother part with that being Jerusalem, so that being so that would be the land. So the daughter
Not
would
the
be the
land,
children.
Charles, not the land. Have we been talking about Jerusalem as a land at all?
Not as a land, as a group of people. We're just really talking about the children of
Yeah.
Israel.
Yeah. So why would you say the land?
So if we're talking about Jerusalem, yeah, no, I still don't got it then.
All right. Think about what a mother is to a daughter. What is the mother to the daughter, the relationship there? Thomas?
Role model.
Yeah.
Mother.
Role
Yeah.
model. And in the same token, what is the daughter to the mother? To the mother.
Um. What's it called? A sign of her work. I'm looking for another word, but a spitting image.
Yeah. The
Okay.
image of it.
Yeah.
So the Proverbs against thee is the mother, which is the one teaching, and the daughter, which is the one learning, and they are one and the same. How would that relate to the children of Israel? Think about everything that has been happening in comparison to the children of Israel. The worshiping of all the other gods and continually going back and forth, having a moment where they don't, and then they go back to it. A moment don't, and then back to it. So that relation to it would be the generations before reproducing the generations that come afterwards. In other words, the whoredom of Jerusalem, the whoredom of the children of Israel, you keep on reproducing that same whoredom. In
That's
the same
crazy.
go ahead.
That's crazy because that was my first answer, but I chose not to say it. I thought it was just going to be a random guess and it would have sounded crazy, but that's what I was going to say. That's
Okay.
crazy. I should have just said it, bro. It's wild.
You should have just said it. Now, remember, when you give a guess, if it's related to what we've been reading and you can back it up like, well, we've been seeing this in what we've been reading, is that a rando guess, Thomas?
I felt like it would have been random. How would have kind of described it? It would have sounded weird, but I think you would have got it.
Well, if it's not related to what we're reading, then it is random. And I'm glad you didn't say it.
Yeah.
Because even if it turns out, what's the problem with saying a random guess that happens to be right?
I don't know what's the problem. Hello?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You said
Tell me.
what's okay. The problem with saying a rando guess that's not based in the scripture that happens to be right is you don't know how you got there, and I don't know how you got there. So if you happen to get it right by chance, instead of backing it up with the verses, then I would say that you were right, thinking you understood it, but you
Mm,
didn't actually understand. That's why, even if your answer is correct, if you can't back it up with what we've been reading today or with the verses that are related to today, if we brought up something related to it, then there's no growth there because I didn't see your work. I don't know if you actually understand or if you just happen to be right. And if you just happen to be right, then it doesn't help you in the future with getting things correct in the future.
makes total sense.
So the parts in here that we have that show that, for one, the whoredom. What was the whoredom that he was talking about? Worshipping of other gods. Even bringing up with other lovers. Even with bringing up that I'm gonna cause you to stop playing the harlot. So everything in here is all about stopping something that continues to happen, and that thing that continues to happen is the service and worship of other gods instead of the one true God. And then right before it, he points out that because thou hast not remembered the days of thy youth. Well, what have we been reading this entire time that had to do with the days of thy youth? Well, at the beginning of the chapter, we read about the children of Israel as a whole being unwanted, not being loved. Nobody cared about them. But God wanted them to live. God loved them. Well, if we think about that time frame in history, what has been happening since God chose the children of Israel, since God saved them from Egypt? Well, since that point, they have constantly done the same thing. So contextually, what we are looking at is a repetitive process of worshiping other gods. As a matter of fact, what was the most common thing that even leaders of Israel that we were reading about would still do wrong, even if they were giving God their heart and doing right by Him in almost all their ways? What was the most common thing that kept on happening? Charles?
Trying to remember. Wasn't the high places still around at the time? Going to the high
Yes.
places?
They did not destroy the high places. There were certain individuals that did, but the most common thing that would keep on happening, even with those that did serve God, that did follow God, is they didn't get rid of the high places, the places of false worship. So even in the midst of those times with those that were following, only a few of them actually followed 100%. There was only like 3 to 5 of them. All the other kings, all the other judges, all the other prophets, they left that lingering sin of idolatry throughout. So when we talk about forgetting the days of thy youth, forgetting when you guys were young as a nation. Well, what happened? I saved you from Egypt. I showed my power and proved right then and there I am the one true God. So you take all that and then you go into the proverb of a mother and a daughter. Well, what's the relationship between them? And what's the comparison of the children of Israel? Reproducing the same thing over and over and over again. Now, does that proverb work for everything in life when it comes to a mother and daughter? Is it always true, Charles?
I don't think I would use it for every single facet of life.
Exactly. Not every daughter is like their mother. There's actually a lot of daughters that are not like their moms. And a lot of times it's out of rebelliousness. But there are a lot more that are like their moms. There's a turn of phrase when it comes to dating a woman. If you want to know what your wife is going to be like, look to her mother. That's what you can look to and see what your wife is going to be like in the future. Now, is that always true? No. But now, if we're talking about a relationship where somebody respects their mom or follows their mom and actually learns in that type of mother-daughter relationship, yeah, they become exactly like their parents. Take, for example, my sister and my mother. My mother cannot admit when she's wrong. She will manipulate words. She will say things like, and she'll pretend to admit she's wrong in a generic sense. But when it comes to actually admitting, she can't. It's always the outside, it's always the other. Well, my sister, with the things that she believes in, she is unwilling to admit when she's wrong. A perfect example was a conversation that it surprised me because she was my hero growing up. She was who I wanted to be like. So just to find out that she's an indoctrinated person who has no ability to think for herself. She literally was trying to say that the Little Mermaid with the black chick playing Little Mermaid was not political and that people were just making it seem political. If you look at that objectively, thinking for yourself and looking at the scenario, mermaids are Scandinavian, the whole region. We're talking about an area that is strictly white. There's no black folk at all. Then take into account we have the cartoon, a white redhead. We have all this stuff to say what kind, and it matches with it. All this stuff in kind. And I pointed out to her because she said, "Well, it's not it's just diversity." Diversity is a political charged term. Diversity of race is not our strength. Diversity of thought. Charles, if you're surrounded by 10 black folk and you being black yourself, are you guys all going to think the same?
No.
So if I get a room with 20 Republicans, Christian conservative Republicans, and I have black folks, Indian folks, Chinese folks, Mexican folks, and some white folks. Is that actual diversity?
The question still to me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it? They all think the same.
Oh, because it's by no. Then it's no, because it's you brought up conservative Christian earlier, right?
Yeah, they're all conservative Christian, but there's
Then
some black, there's some white, there's Hispanic, but they're all the same thought.
no.
Exactly. That's not actual diversity. People of the same race, you can have diversity by having people of the same race if they have a diversity of thought. And it doesn't matter if it's black, doesn't matter if it's white, doesn't matter what it is. Now, cultural diversity, it can have positive effects. But are we stronger just because we have cultural diversity? Not if we don't have diversity of thought. Not if we can't work together. Not if the division is so bad, and not if it's enforced indoctrination where people can't think for themselves. You have to be able to reason things out. And even diversity of thought, is that always a strength, Thomas?
No.
Exactly. I'll give a perfect example. All of us here, Thomas and then Charles, are going to respond in that order. Do you guys think it's okay for a 24-year-old to be dating a 14-year-old?
Definitely not.
No.
Exactly. Same here. So if somebody is in and they're like, well, I think a 24-year-old should be able to date a 14-year-old. She's already past puberty. Is that a strength to have that type of diversity of thought, Thomas?
Absolutely not.
Exactly. Even with diversity of thought, it can be a strength, but it depends on what the thought is. It depends on what the result is. A perfect example of this is Sharia law, Islam. It calls for the death and the forced religious following of other nations, of the children of Israel. Is that strength to have that going around? No. Backing up a terrorist organization like Hamas, is that a strength of diversity? No. So it doesn't matter if you're talking about cultural diversity, diversity of race, or diversity of thought. On either side, diversity can be strong, but only if the diversity is promoting to a betterness of everyone, not when it's a diversity that tears down. But just like my mother, my sister can't admit that she's wrong about that, even if I show the facts. So just as the mother is unable to do that, so is the daughter. And just as in Jerusalem is able, and all the children of Israel that's talking about, just as much as the generations before kept on doing this, kept on delving into idolatry, especially when it came to relationships and dating of women, I'm not dating, marriages of women from other nations, when they were explicitly told not to for that reason. The later generations did the same. It did not change. Now then, does anybody have any comments or questions about the second section as we go to the final section? This might be one of the longest Bible studies we've done, unintentionally, but it's awesome.
Unintentionally, yeah.
I had to specify because, Charles, you know we've done Bible studies that help you with understanding salvation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I understand.
All right. So go ahead and raise your hand if anybody has a question about the second section or before, or I'll go ahead and read the final section. All right. Then I'll get into Ezekiel chapter 16 in verses 45 to 48. In verse 45, thou art thy mother's daughter, that loatheth her husband and her children. Loatheth, I said that weird. Thou art thy mother's daughter, that loatheth her husband and her children. And thou art the sister of thy sisters, which loatheth their husbands and their children. Your mother was an Hittite, and your father an Amorite. And thine elder sister is Samaria, she and her daughters that dwell at thy left hand. Thy younger sister that dwell at thy right hand is Sodom and her daughters. Yet hast thou not walked after their ways, nor done after their abominations, but as if that were a very little thing, thou wast corrupted more than they in all thy ways. As I live, saith the Lord, Sodom thy sister hath not done, nor her daughters, as thou hast done, thou and thy daughters. Now, the reason why I had you guys figure out what it meant based on what it said, look at what we read here. Does that confirm what we got into, or does it give a different depiction? Thomas and then Charles.
It confirms.
Yeah. Now, how does it confirm it? Charles and then Thomas.
Talking about like bringing up the comparisons with Samaria and with Sodom. Samaria, their sister and their daughters, what they're doing, I almost said Solomon, Sodom, and their sisters, how they were worse than Sodom and all of that. Just bringing that. Let me just end it like that. Bringing in comparison of Samaria being a sister, Sodom being a sister in that sense.
You forgot one important part in what you said. These are nations that are not followers of God.
Oh
You have to bring in.
yeah, I forget because I totally forgot about Samaria, but Sodom I kind of remember. I remember what happened to him at least.
Yeah. Sodom and Gomorrah got destroyed because of
They
all
got
their
destroyed.
wickedness.
They got obliterated.
Yeah. Yeah. And the one sin that was like prevalent at the time was the homosexuality. That wasn't the only sin listed, but that was one of them, was the homosexuality. But with that in mind, back to this point, yes, we have a list of all these other nations that in the past and currently are not followers of God. But we didn't need this in order to understand what it meant. And this is why it's important to point that out. When you look at the context of something, there are going to be times where you don't have this explanation here. It's not available in other verses in comparison of Proverbs. So how are you supposed to know what the proverb mean if it doesn't specifically explain it like this? Thomas and then Charles.
You won't know. You're just gonna have that
Incorrect.
general what?
Incorrect.
Oh,
Charles?
So if we didn't have this, I would need to look at the context that I read in that previous section and everything before if I didn't have this to determine.
Exactly. Thomas, you didn't think about what we just did. Didn't we figure it out before we read this?
you're right.
And how did we figure it out? We look at the comparison of what's being stated, a mother and a daughter. Well, what is that comparison? One's the teacher, one's the receiver. Okay. Is there any other comparisons with them? Not really, with just that information. Okay, then what? And we know that it's related to the children of Israel because it said so. Well, what have we been talking about with the children of Israel? So when you break down piece by piece what we have already read and how it connects to what we're reading now, that is how you're able to tell. So, yes, we have this explanation, and yes, it matches exactly what we said it meant. That idolatry being passed down generation to generation, that idolatry that they keep going to, learning from the older generation to become the same as the younger. But we didn't need this explanation here because we already had the answer, because we looked at the context and everything connected to it. Now, when we look at that in 45, there's an extra detail in here that relates as a lesson for people today, and not just people of men and women of God, but even people outside of God. How does 45 relate to both the people of God and the people not of God today? Thomas?
I'm reading 45.
Mm-hmm.
Thou art thy mother's daughter, that loveth her husband and her children, and thou art the sister of thy sister, which loveth their husband and their children. Your mother was a Hittite, and your father was an Amorite. Now, what was your question one more time?
How does this relate not just the people of God today, but also the people not of God today?
Um, in relation to like you being a role model and the person, your child being your image, you see this going down the line of
Nope.
all this. Okay.
Got to remember what came in 46 through 8. Who are the sisters? Who are the mother and daughter? You see what I'm saying? What are we talking about? So that's part of it, but that's not the whole story. Charles?
I'm still thinking about it on how it relates to yesterday and today.
Mm-hmm. All right. So thou art thy mother's daughter that loatheth her husband. Well, who is the husband? Thomas?
Oh God.
Yeah. You hate God, you loathe God and your children. Well, who is the children? The new generations, the ones that are following after. The generations part is the part you got right. But the hatred of God, that part about going against. And then as it goes into, and thou art the sister of thy sisters. So you're just like your sisters that go against, which loathe their husbands. So it's also talking about the hypocrisy of people that don't even follow their own gods. So this is really bringing into account for people today where you're sitting here looking at people of the world and all their fakeness and all their hypocrisy and their wickedness, and you're not even looking at yourself and what you're doing. So quick to put the condemnation and judgment on them, but you're just like them. So the secondary part that you missed out on was that comparing them as if you're better when you're not. Looking at the people of the world, the people that are not of God, as if they're so evil, you're evil. They don't follow their own belief system that they claim they're hypocrites, but you're a hypocrite too. That's the comparison that's also being shown there. Do you see how that's showing, Thomas?
Now that you explained it that way, yeah.
And Charles, do you see how that's showing now?
Only because you explained it. I was gonna sit here all day. Let you explain it.
Okay. And then pointing out in 47, this is where your hint would have come in. Yet hast thou not walked after their ways. So you aren't doing the things that they're doing. You're not doing the abominations that they're doing. But you act like it's a small thing. The fact that and you don't realize you were more corrupt than all the things that they did. That was your hint, was 47. Now, question. Thomas, then Charles first. Did either of you look at 47 to try to get an answer?
No.
And then Charles?
Rereading it, but I wasn't, like I said, I was still trying to think of the answer, but also rereading, so I didn't catch it.
Okay.
You did say
So
based on 45.
no, I said, but it does relate to 46 through 48. I said that too.
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah.
based on 45, but it relates to those. So that part of relation should have read it. And then when you were reading it, and this is where Charles, you probably slipped up. How does that relate to 45? Well, we're talking about them being just like them, but we're also talking about it being more corrupted. And even though they're not doing the same, they're doing more corrupt. And who's the husband? God. Okay, that's how it should have connected. You see that, Charles?
Now I do. Can you hear me?
Okay, cool. Yep. All right. Now then, so that's the end of this section. And that's what we are going through in this section. Now, does anybody have any comments or questions before we pray out? Now would be the time to raise your hand. Excuse me. All right. Then I'll go ahead and pray us out. Everybody bow your heads. Father, thank you for this time of study and this time of reading that we've been able to do. To go in and to understand these comparisons that you're giving. Not just the comparisons, but also the judgment and the fact that you don't play favorites, even with your chosen people. They may be your chosen people, but they don't get special treatment. What's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And it goes to point out, even in today, even in the New Testament, there is no difference between Jew or Greek. For you, Lord, are Lord over all. And we just pray as we go forward when we're dealing with others, that not only can we try to reach them in love, but also make sure that we look at ourselves. That while we're sitting here looking at them as if they're lost, to make sure that whatever we're talking to them about, that we would not be hypocrites ourselves, even doing worse than them. So God, we pray for to be that good example and to not be hypocrites in that way. In your son's holy and precious name, Jesus Christ Yeshua. Amen.
Amen.
All right. And just a heads up, today's Bible listening is Matthew chapter 26 to Mark chapter 8. Again, that's Matthew 26 to Mark chapter 8. Guys, got that?
Got it.
Got it.
All right, then I'll go ahead and close this out unless there's anything else you guys want to add or say.
No.
All right. Have a good night.